Welcome back to Legitimate Targets, everybody. I hope you're all having a great day. With so much going on in the Middle East, it is very important to talk to American veterans and officials who are voicing their displeasure, their condemnation for what is being done in our name, in their name, with our taxpayer dollars. And joining me today is someone who is doing just that in a very heroic manner. Josephine Gilbo's a veteran, a U.S. Army intelligence officer who has been advocating for peace and prosperity for the people of Gaza, for the people of Yemen, for those that are suffering under the hands of the Zionist entity and the terrorist state that is Israel. And we were just talking before we went and recorded here, and some very interesting stories. But Josephine, how are you doing today? Thank you so much for joining me.
I'm doing good. I'm adjusting back to being in America after being in the Middle East almost a month and a half. So it's like dystopia.
Yeah. What exactly were you there for, and where were you?
Well, I had actually flew in at the beginning of March to go on a Christian pilgrimage inside of Palestine. And I wasn't able to make it back past the Israeli customs and borders. When you enter from Jordan, the King Hussein crossing into Palestine, it is all controlled by the Israeli government. There isn't any, the Palestinian Authority or the Palestinian police aren't the ones who ultimately decide if you can enter their country. Because as you know, Israel's an apartheid state, so they control the borders of Palestine. And so I had to go through Israel's customs and borders. And they did not let me in, and they interrogated me for several hours, actually asking me specific questions about my assignments as an intelligence officer, asked me to go through my phone, which I said to them that I didn't feel comfortable doing that, considering I was an intelligence officer for 10 years. All of my contacts, most of my contacts are my former colleagues, friends, family of my former colleagues, so I didn't feel comfortable doing that. And there was just really a level of frustration because I was like being very hesitant to share a lot of information with them. And ultimately they decided not to let me in, and they banned me for 5 years, stating that I was a public security threat to Israel.
How did they tell you that you were? Did they just give you like a slip of paper and say you
Yeah,
can't come in?
yes, they do. After they are done with their interrogations, they detain you and like in this area, and then they come with a decision and a form that basically you have to sign, stating that you understand you're not allowed to enter into Israel, and it's a 5-year ban on my passport number.
Wow. How long were you there at the border crossing awaiting this decision?
Yeah, I think I was there like from start to finish, probably like 7:30, and I think I got out maybe around like 3 or 4. So it was
Uh-huh.
quite a journey. I mean, I got interrogated by several customs and border agents. You know, I entered and explained these are the locations I plan to go, these are the hotels I'm going to stay in. I had all these Christian sites that I was going to visit. I had wrote my itinerary out to make it very easy because I knew that they would be, there was going to be a magnifying glass on me. So I wanted to make sure I was as transparent as possible. And so I had all this information. And there was one thing that I said that I think kind of tipped the guy off. I said, I'm basically going on my Christian pilgrimage. And he was like writing something like this. And he looked up and he said, basically. And I was like, dang, yes, basically. He's like, you can have a seat over there. And then I was met with another group. They were asking me about my Christian faith. You know, I was born and raised a Catholic. I'm still a practicing Catholic. And so they were asking me, what does it mean to me to go see these Christian sites and all this information? And for me, it was like easy to answer those questions as someone who's like born and raised Catholic. And that still wasn't enough for them. And so they brought me into an interrogation room, started asking me questions about my job, my time in the military, my assignments. And they even asked me what I thought the solution was between the situation in Gaza and Israel. And I said, maybe the Jews should move to Florida. I said, I think that we should make Florida the Jewish state.
I don't
And
think
she was
that
like,
helped your
oh,
case.
she was like, oh, so you think we should leave the land? I was like, well, if you're not feeling safe, I know that you'd be safe there. And Governor DeSantis really loves Jews. So you guys should really, think about going there. I was like actually dead serious. And then she asked me to type in an area code in my phone, 972. And I had two contacts pop up, someone that I had been helping in Gaza, and then a doctor that I had met like through this movement. And that kind of just like set red flags off as well. So yeah, ultimately they denied me entry, and I had to go back to Jordan, which ended up being good because the majority of the people in Jordan are Palestinian anyway. So I got to meet so many amazing Palestinian families. It was Ramadan at the time. I got invited to iftar almost every night. I met new families. And what was interesting is almost every single family that I met, they have stories about how they have immediate family members that have been killed by Israel. Almost every single family. It was like dystopia. It was just like, what is happening? These people literally for decades have been getting killed by Israel.
Mm-hmm. I'm surprised that there's any Christian holy sites left to be seen. I mean, I know in the south of Lebanon, there were Christian churches that were bombed. In Gaza, of course, they've bombed St. Porphyrius Orthodox Church, third oldest church in the world. Twice, I think they bombed it. It's still standing somehow. But it's insane. And I'm assuming they just didn't let you in because of your level of condemnation for what is going on. Did you try to erase your social media before crossing?
No, I knew it would be impossible to do that, honestly, because like if you Google my name, there's just pages and pages of things that I've been doing. So I wasn't going to attempt to try and even do that, but I did just remove the app from my phone, which set off a red flag. And she asked me those questions like, why did you remove your app? And how long ago did you remove your app? And I was just like pulling that Hillary Clinton card. I do not recall. I don't recall. I don't recall. And it after a few hours, it was like hard. I didn't want to like strongly condemn her to her face because I wanted to get into Palestine, but she could tell that I obviously had sympathy and for the Palestinian cause. And so just like that alone, to just have sympathy for the starvation of children alone is enough not to be able to enter Israel. And to your point about the Christian sites, I'm actually not surprised that they have those Christian sites because they need that in order to like have this propaganda. And so they bring these Christians on these, Christian pilgrimages to go see these Christian sites. And this is where they brainwash them. And so that's why they more than likely maintain the Christian sites is not for the respect of Christianity, but to use them as a tool to have Christians come to Israel and brainwash them.
Mm-hmm. How does a U.S. Army intelligence officer go from being in that position to now doing what you are doing and defending the rights of those who are suffering at the hands and dying at the hands of the U.S. empire?
Yeah. So, I'm like a very interesting case. I come from a Republican background. I am a conservative. Even after all this, I still consider myself to hold conservative values. I don't agree with the government, the Republican government right now. I don't agree with the Democratic government right now. I know that like there's a level of corruption that exists, but I do come from that background. And of course, I joined the military at 18 years old. I was in the military 17 years. My father was a United States Army veteran. And so this was sort of ingrained in me. And of course, I grew up a devout Catholic. So these are all the levels of and I grew up in the South Louisiana. So these are, you can imagine the levels of programming of my mind to come to this realization of like so many things I've been lied about. But it started actually, it didn't just happen in a vacuum. Like little things happened throughout my career that started like touching my heart because I've always been an empathetic person. I come from, I was born and raised in a family where my father was an alcoholic, and he ultimately committed suicide. He became one of those statistics of the veterans committing suicide. As you know, there's 22 veterans a day committing suicide, which is something I really advocate to try and end, this like suicide epidemic. So I come from a very empathetic heart. And so throughout some of my assignments, I was kind of questioning things. Particularly, I work for the Defense Intelligence Agency in Crystal City, which is Arlington. They call it just outside the Pentagon. It's the offices that are just outside the Pentagon. And I worked on a habeas corpus writ contract as an intelligence analyst for a litigation team for the detainees in Guantanamo Bay. So for your audience that doesn't know this, when someone is detained without charges, they have a right to file a habeas corpus legal proceeding that basically says you're detaining me without just cause. There's no charges, there's no conviction or prosecution. So during this time, I had a top secret SCI clearance with a counterintelligence polygraph test. This is the level of classified information that I had access to. And some of that information dated all the way back to when the detainees were originally captured at or detained at the black sites. And reading some of this information about how we treated human beings who we didn't even know were innocent, and even if they were guilty, just like the level of torture that was applied to the human beings, like really struck me. It was the first time, I think, in my life that I was like questioning, what are we really doing here? Like our government in the Middle East. But, you know, I was like really brainwashed. I was really like, you know, patriot. I am a patriot. I still consider myself to be a patriot, maybe more now than even then. But all I did at that time was started following media outlets from other countries. This was something I didn't really do. At the time, I took my corporate media, Fox News. I used to watch Fox News. I used to share Fox News on my social media. I'm like ashamed now. But I started watching media outlets from other countries, like all over, India, Russia, even Ireland, the Middle East, Al Jazeera, Qatar, all these outlets. And nothing really had happened since 2017, except for the pullout of Afghanistan, which I felt was a disaster. But at the very least, you know, our government was trying to save these civilians from, you know, getting targeted by the Taliban, which, you know, they flew from Afghanistan into Guantanamo Bay, which at the time I was stationed in DC. And so we had a lot of military personnel and families and spouses helping to get these refugees on their feet, get them into apartments, get them furniture, all these things. And so the next big thing that happened was October 7th. And I was just like watching this footage of what they were doing to Gaza. I didn't understand, you know, Arabic language, but I could see with my eyes that they were indiscriminately bombing that area. This was not how we conducted military operations. You know, they didn't even attempt to do urban operations, which, you know, is when you basically have a team go in, do a capture kill mission of a military operative, and then move out. This is like all what we're trained to do, but they were literally just dropping bombs, and I'm watching children getting just slaughtered. And I, even in the beginning, was like, no way, like something is off here. Are they using these locations? You know, are they human shields? I still was like, it was really hard to like question all these things. But by October 24th, my brain finally was like, okay, this is not a military offensive. They're conducting a genocide. So I spent the next, 250 hours researching, watching documentaries from like 15 years ago of the Gaza blockade, of fishermen. I mean, the historical context of what these Palestinians have been going through for 76 plus years. I started researching even like the late 1800s, these Zionists started, planning what they were going to do in taking Palestine. And so, it was a really great awakening for me, to realize what was actually happening, what my government was actually a part of, and then also what I had been a part of. I started learning about Israel's influence on our invasion of Iraq. And it was like, well, what are we doing? What have we done? We are literally going into this region, these countries in the Middle East, causing death and destruction, killing innocent people by the millions. I'm talking, we have killed millions of people there. And I think I'm still like processing it. I have like serious PTSD just thinking about being a part of this war machine.
Do you think that this you brought up the very serious issue of veteran suicide, and of course PTSD. Do you think that a lot of people will say that any war is gruesome and bloody, and of course you're going to have PTSD. Of course you're going to have people who decide to sadly take their own lives thereafter participating in these wars. But do you think we have such an acute problem with this in the United States because now people are waking up? But, for years we just sold lie after lie after lie from Vietnam onwards of why we're participating in these wars. And then when we send these young boys from Ohio, Iowa, wherever, Nebraska, to go participate, they see something completely different. And now that's the same thing here, be it in Yemen, be it we're not participating in Gaza with our own troops, supposedly, but it's become much worse. You think this is the primary reason behind it?
Yeah, I think there's multiple reasons. I think there's a systematic, I'm learning more about this, but I'm confident to say that there is a systematic effort to not help veterans to like fully heal. Because if we as veterans had the actual support that we need, we would be the force that would go against the corrupt government. We are the trained ones. Imagine a force of military veterans who aren't on depression medicine numbing themselves, who aren't addicted to drugs, who aren't committing suicide, who don't have marital problems, domestic violence problems. Imagine a strong, mentally healthy force of people coming together to stand against a corrupt government. I'm starting
Some
to
might
realize
say they could take over the government.
they would take over the government, absolutely, and they're trained. I mean, these people that you're talking about, if I work for Eisenhower Media Network, we have a former major general that I work with that is speaking against this corrupt government. So I think there's like this systematic failure to keep us like this. When my father died by suicide, and I went to clean out his room, underneath his bed were boxes and boxes of pain medicine. I mean, I had never seen so much opioid. I was like, I don't even know how I'm going to get rid of all this. They had been sending him like enough pain medicine that it would have killed him had he been taking that. I mean, it would have shut his nervous system down. This is what they do to veterans. They don't actually heal the issue or, target the root issue, which is the fact that they numb our consciousness to go kill innocent people. And then we get back home and our consciousness returns. And then we're like, what the hell did we just do? They just like slap some antidepressants on us, or some pain medicine just to like numb us. But to your point, like this 22 veteran suicide a day is definitely on the rise. I went last year to a conference with a group of post 9/11 veterans, and there was just flying to California to be a part of this conference was 40 new veterans who have come to the truth since October 7th and need a community of people to be a part of, because it's so difficult to be isolated and learning the truth about what you participated in. And this is what's happening because you have these veterans who are realizing what they did, and then they look to our government for support and help. And our government is still perpetrating the lies, on the podium, repeating the lies over and over again. So yeah, I definitely anticipate that the suicide rate is going to skyrocket.
The craziest thing, it makes me think about this story. When I was in Yemen, I don't know if this guy is still on the USS Harry Truman. Maybe he's not. He's probably not. But there was someone I went to high school with, and I'm 25, so this is somewhat recently. We graduated in 2018. And for at least a brief period of time, I stayed in contact with him and through my group of friends. He was on the USS Harry Truman. And I thought, how crazy is that? I'm in Yemen now, and he's above me, potentially, dropping bombs half a kilometer away on a bunch of civilians and innocent people, and I'm right next. It's like, it's the craziest thing what this war machine does. It really is.
Yeah. I troll the USS Truman's Instagram page all the time, and I'm constantly watching, what the families are saying about the fact that they've been mobilized for a long time. Like, these families are like, bring them home, bring them home. So
on the Instagram page.
On an Instagram page, USS Truman has their own Instagram page. Yes.
Wow.
And I finally made a comment about get our naval forces out of the Red Sea. We should not be dying for Israel. And all of these family members were like hearting my comment. Yes, because it's true. We know the truth of what's going on, and we know that any harm that is in the way of our American sailors is for Israel. And the American people do not want to die for Israel.
What do you think about this recent news, which I welcome, of course, that after months of both the Biden and Trump administrations bombing the hell out of Yemen and innocent civilians there, now we have a peace deal where the United States said, okay, we don't want this smoke anymore. We're leaving, or at least we're not going to be bombing you anymore. And the Yemenis said, okay, but we're not going to stop the Red Sea blockade for the Israeli ships. I mean, how can this be viewed other than it's, of course, a victory for people who are patriots and America first and don't want to see our young boys go and girls get sent to go die or kill innocent people. But it's really an L. It's a loss for the imperialist machine, don't you think?
Yeah, I'm waiting to see a little bit more information about that. I'm one of those like kind of trust but verify. I don't know if this is propaganda to try and maybe settle the fires of the American people because of what's going on. Because, even though they might move the USS Truman out, there's still going to be a submarine there. And so I don't know if this is some sort of retaliation against Israel because, the signal gate, the signal, what was it? Telemessage. There was the leaked telemessage. Our national officials were using this to communicate with Israel. Trump didn't know about it. So I'm not sure yet. I'm not putting my eggs in the basket, let's just say. But yes, I welcome the news. I obviously have changed my perspective on like war in general. I'm not going to say like I'm a total pacifist, but I definitely think that we need to make diplomacy normal and not bombing other countries. But bombing other countries has become the norm for America. So I do welcome any sort of diplomatic effort to stop killing people. But I am hesitant to celebrate.
I'm no pacifist either. But I agree with you on the points you made. I think that we need to bring an end to this stuff. And it's why I'm also so happy to see Trump, personally, I think we should just be not involved in Iran at all. Just let them do whatever and stop sanctioning them. But, he came out and said, we're not going to let Israel drag us into a war in Iran. We want diplomacy. What do you think about that and the general attitude of Trump himself? I mean, he seems to be keeping his cards very close to his chest, as he has this Steve Witkoff going around and doing all these deals. He's not really telling anyone what's going on. It's a semi-welcome change, and from my perspective.
Yeah, if I'm being honest with you, I don't trust this administration at all. I don't think that the powers that be are actually this administration. I think that the elite and oligarchy are the ones that are controlling this chess piece. And so while I welcome some of the positive changes this administration could be bringing to put an end to everything that's happening, I also know that if this administration had the power that it says it has, it would have ended the genocide as soon as January 21st, because it has the power to do that. And we have international laws. We have the Leahy laws. I'm familiar with the Geneva Convention. Of course, I was in the military 17 years. All this is getting violated, yet we're still sending weapons to Israel. This administration is complicit in the genocide. This administration has violated international laws, the Geneva Convention, and Leahy laws. So I don't have a whole lot of positive things to say about this administration. And also, I preface, I don't even think it's this administration. I think there is a group of elite people who are even controlling them. And, money talks. And so, when you have a billionaire that is president, of course, that is what moves him. That has what moved him his entire life. And so, of course, money is moving him in the direction one way or the other. And I think he's watching our economy is tanking. The tariff scare isn't working. And so, he has to start changing his moves. Otherwise, we're going to continue to fall as an empire.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Josephine Guilbeault, thank you so much for joining me today. Where should people follow along with you on social media? Because you've got some very interesting plans that were maybe temporarily interrupted, but I think people are going to want to follow along and see what you've got cooking in the future.
Yeah, so I work for Eisenhower Media Network, like I said before, which is a group of retired FBI, CIA, and military officials. And so you can find me here, or I have an Instagram page, josephine.guilbeault. I really wasn't into social media before this. As an intelligence officer, you can imagine I stayed off it. But I found that, social media is the new way to communicate the news, because mainstream media is falling and podcasts and social media is rising. So you can find me on Instagram or TikTok.
Perfect. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.